Welcome everyone to another book review. Before I dig into what the book is about, viewer discretion is advised, as it's going to be laced with profanity, and the book I'm covering has plenty of it. And so now, without further ado, we're going to review the book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. What a guy. I first found him on the Joe Rogan podcast, but before I get into the subjective view, David Goggins went through 3 hell weeks, became a Navy SEAL, got through Army Ranger School, went through the Air Force Air Traffic Controller program as well. The highest of the high. Did the Badwater 135 miles through Death Valley. And this is a man who once held the world record in pull-ups, 4,030 pull-ups in a 24-hour period. Always pushing the limits. And this all begins in his past. It's a book with 11 chapters. In the very first chapter, it talks about his fucked up childhood, right? The beatings he took, the lack of food, the lack of sleep. No mercy on him at all. Lived in an area where the KKK was a hotbed. He went through every single thing you could imagine, right? His father, Trunis Goggins, ran this roller rink. And there was a highlight in the first chapter that really just hit home. Hit me hard, right? He got a gun out from under David Goggins' pillow. David Goggins was around the age of 6. I believe it was 6 to 8 years old, in that range. His father got a loaded gun out from under his pillow. He slept there every night. Young David Goggins. But yet his father kept a gun there. Did he really care about the kids? Anyway, the emotions are coming into play. But let's just say, chapter 1 starts fucked up. Childhood's like that. Then he gets into the Air Force. After managing to barely make it through high school with like a 1.8 GPA. Gets into the Air Force, serves his time. But then he balloons all the way up to almost 300 pounds. 297 pounds, I believe, at 6'1". But then, after a year or two, he looks in the mirror and says, fuck this shit. I gotta change this. So he signed up for the Navy SEAL. He signed up for the Navy to try to make it to the SEALs. He had 3 months to lose 100 pounds. And he did it in 3 months' time. Then he went to BUD/S. And my favorite chapter that it ends up leading into is called Taking Souls. And in the 3rd Hell Week, he's part of Boat Crew 2. And with all his comrades, he takes the boat and says, hey, let's fuck with the instructors. Let's fuck with their minds. So in the halfway point of Hell Week on Wednesday, which if you don't want to know what Hell Week is 130 hours straight of torture. No rest. Really to train the mind. They take the boat. David Goggins and his crew take the boat. And even though most of them are barely holding it, they're throwing that boat high up into the sky. And they're saying, can't hurt Boat Crew 2. To the instructors who are sitting back, sipping their coffee, relaxing, because they went through this once. And when David Goggins looked back at them, he said that it looked like he took their souls. Right? Mentally playing with their games. In other words, in his words, mentally fucking with them. Eventually, after 3 Hell Weeks, he makes it. He becomes a Navy SEAL. Then after some time, he begins to run marathons. Guy had really never run miles. Goes to San Diego in a 24-hour period. To qualify for any other races, he had to run 100 miles at minimum. He ends up running 101 miles in a 24-hour period. But that's not before making it 70 miles. Before literally shitting himself, right? Kidneys started to fail and everything. Body started to break down. His fiancée at the time cared for him. But then he says, you know what? My body feels broken. But he'd been through it all. He reached deep inside. and he finished 101 miles, just for good measure. Yes, he put himself at death's door, but he discovered something special through it all. His mind was pushed to a new level. Then he became a prolific runner. And then, after this whole period in the book of talking about marathons and military work, he goes for the pull-up record, destroys his hands, gets down to the layer, peels his hands so much that it gets down to the inner dermis, where the nerves are. But still does it. He failed the pull-up record 2 times, and on the 3rd time, he got the world record at the time. In the very end of the book, it's called What If? And he's always asking that question about how he could challenge himself. And when everyone goes for a certain record and feels as if they've achieved what they've wanted to achieve, he says, no, it's a process. It doesn't end. Life goes on. The struggle continues. There's always a new level. You've always got to be pushing the mind. And that's the thing. He feels you have to fall in love with it. And so that's the base of the 11 chapters. And then at the end of each chapter, there's a challenge for you to complete. And my favorite challenge so far is the accountability mirror. On my bathroom mirror, I've put up 4 different goals that I feel like I need to work on. My own weaknesses, my shortcomings, my insecurities. And putting little goals, staring at myself and saying, look, man, it's time to get your shit together. So David Goggins, thank you very much for that. And of course, there are a few other challenges, but they're all roughly similar. So, accountability mirror is the one I suggest. I believe it's after chapter 2. Now, what do I think about the book or any quotes that I found interesting? Well, I believe it's page 219. He says, you will feel insecure. You may not be the best around at all times. You may be the only Black, Asian, Latino, whatever you identify with. And at times you're going to feel alone. Get over it. It can be a little harsh coming out of his mouth, but based on the man he is, I get where he's going. Because in the book, like so much of the broad spectrum of literature that I've read and that exists out there, I see that a common theme is life is suffering. Now, it doesn't mean you can't find happiness. It doesn't mean we can't find fulfillment. But suffering is a part of life. And I don't think it's going away. I think it's what it is. The struggle is real. We will lose everything we have. Plain and simple. Now, are you going to have great times? Sure. Are you going to have bad times? Yeah. But that's like life. You got to just be able to ride the waves, right? Or you think about a pitcher, right? Even the best hitters can't even hit the ball 50% of the time, right? The pitcher's throwing sliders, curveballs, blazing hot fastballs. And the greatest hitters can't even hit it 50% of the time. And sometimes I think about life that way. I almost feel like at times we're not even hitting it 50% of the time. In fact, we're not even using 50% of our potential with mental strength or anything of the sort. And so, I like his message of life is suffering. And I don't know if that's ultimately what I'm going to claim about life, but it's got a really strong argument in my mind. Anyway, if I'm going to use the fire emoji icon, I give this a Fuego 5 out of 5. And again, thank you, David Goggins, and I'm truly inspired. I thank all of you viewers out there. A lot of profanity, plenty of it throughout the book if you love it. And eternal gratitude to each and every single one of you. I hope you guys all have one beautiful night.